Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're here.
I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak in support of the government's budget bill. I would first like to say a few words, though, about Jim Flaherty, who passed away just 2 months after delivering the budget. At the very start of his budget speech on February the 11th, Jim quoted Canada's first budget speech from 1868. In that speech, then Minister of Finance John Rose said, quote, we ought to be most careful in our outlay and consider well every shilling we expend, unquote. It's lucky for Jim that his predecessor didn't mention pennies, but I digress, Mr. Speaker. To continue, Jim Flaherty was a mentor and a boss before we became parliamentary colleagues 3 years ago. He was also a friend to me and my family for many years. Like many members of this House, I had been working toward becoming a member of Parliament for some time before finally succeeding. And like many members, I had disappointments and setbacks along the way. Jim was always there with words of support and advice. It's hard to accept that I will not be able to call on him for his thoughtful and wise point of view. But his values and personality were so strong, it should be easy to guess what he would have thought about almost any problem or situation. I know that I will always try to make that guess before I make any political decision in the future. As many noted in the days following his untimely death, Jim's last major accomplishment before leaving Cabinet was presenting this budget. Probably the best-known feature of Budget 2014 is that it forecast a return to a balanced budget next year. That is a tremendous accomplishment given where we were 5 years ago. But the budget contains many initiatives whose benefits will stretch well beyond 2015. I would like to speak to a few of these initiatives that will benefit individuals, families, and businesses in my riding of Mississauga South. Over my 3 years as the MP for Mississauga South, I have come to know my riding very well. We have beautiful residential areas, lush parks, and attractive shopping districts. We have families of every size and type. We have people from every culture and religious background. We have seniors and disabled people. Many of my disabled constituents want to work or need to work, but everyone knows that it can be difficult for the disabled to find and keep employment. Budget 2014 has help for disabled workers. It introduces a new generation of labor market agreements for persons with disabilities. Over the next 4 years, the government will provide $222 million annually through these transfers, to be matched by provinces and territories to better meet the needs of persons with disabilities and employers. Mississauga South has a very large population of seniors. While some are happily retired, others are looking for work or planning to return to the workforce. Budget 2014 renews and expands the targeted initiative for older workers for a 3-year period, representing a federal investment of $75 million to assist unemployed older workers. Many parents in Mississauga South have children in university or college, or who are getting ready to go. I happen to be one of them. Budget 2014 will eliminate the value of student-owned vehicles from the Canada Student Loans Program assessment process to better reflect the needs of students who commute or work while studying. Small and medium-sized businesses are Canada's largest employers. Job seekers in my riding will be knocking on the doors of those businesses in hopes of getting a job. But government red tape and paperwork will make it harder for small businesses to expand and hire more people. Budget 2014 will build on the work of the Red Tape Reduction Commission by reducing the tax compliance and regulatory burden for small and medium-sized businesses. Real estate prices have risen astronomically in the Greater Toronto Area over the past 30 years. When our parents and grandparents tell us what they paid for their homes in the 60s and 70s, we laugh. While they laugh, we silently pray that we'll be able to pay off our mortgages before we retire. What they paid for a bungalow or semi-detached house would barely pay for a minivan or SUV today. And the family home is a major asset for most couples, and often a heavily leveraged one. Canadians looked south with horror when the U.S. housing market collapsed 5 years ago. In the years since, this government has paid very close attention to ensure that Canadians are protected from such a collapse happening here. While it's fun to sit around the dinner table and imagine how much our houses might be worth, those dreams must be rooted in the reality of what an actual buyer can afford in a down payment and ongoing mortgage payments. Budget 2014 includes measures to increase market discipline in residential lending and reduce taxpayer exposure to the housing sector. High mortgage payments mean that most families are taking a close look at all their other monthly bills. That's why we also took steps to increase competition in the wireless sector, which has reduced wireless rates by 20%. Budget 2014 continues this commitment to keeping the cost of wireless services fair. This budget includes steps to lower wholesale roaming rates within Canada and will give the CRTC the power to impose financial penalties on companies that do not comply with the rules. Mr. Speaker, while Canadians don't envy the way their house prices fell so quickly in the United States, they do like the prices in American stores. They wonder why Canadian and American consumer goods prices remain so far apart when the Canadian and American dollars have been so close in value. Budget 2014 also introduces legislation to prohibit unjustified cross-border price discrimination, to reduce the gap between consumer prices in Canada and the United States. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to the budget bill. It continues the prudent management that has defined our government's economic action plan. It will bring real benefits to the constituents and communities of my riding of Mississauga South. These benefits will help Canadians plan for a bright and secure future, a future that will be deficit-free this time next year. The promise of a balanced budget is a fitting legacy of our friend Jim Flaherty, and just one of many. I'm proud to speak in its favor today and would be happy to take questions.
Here.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Macrel-Fortin.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et je remercie M. le Conseil pour son discours, particulièrement les compliments qu'elle a fait à notre regretté confrère, M. Flaherty. Effectivement, ce dernier, au niveau des crédits d'impôt pour les personnes handicapées, avait montré une grande connaissance et un grand cœur. La problématique vis-à-vis ce budget, et elle en a parlé un peu, c'est au niveau du logement. À l'heure actuelle, le Canada est un des rares pays de l'OCDE à ne pas avoir une politique de logement et les mesures budgétaires appropriées qui accompagnent une politique du logement. Présentement, Monsieur le Président, dans ma circonscription, il y a des gens qui sont obligés, des travailleurs, des gens qui travaillent, qui gagnent un salaire, qui sont obligés d'aller à la banque alimentaire parce qu'ils n'auraient pas les moyens de se nourrir et de payer le logement. Et cette situation, de plus en plus de Canadiens le vivent. On a beau parler des budgets répartis sur 5 ans au niveau des intérêts, des budgets pour le logement social, mais manifestement, Monsieur le Président, ce que les gens vivent, c'est dans les faits un retrait total du gouvernement fédéral du politique du logement. Alors, j'aimerais avoir des commentaires de ma consoeur à ce sujet. Merci.
The honourable member for Mississauga South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure that the member was listening to our colleague from Brant, the honourable member from Brant, the majority of whose speech was on the topic of housing. So I don't want to repeat what our colleague said about that, but I do want to say that when it comes to being able to afford housing, what our government has done is to help the average family, in fact, all Canadian families, by lowering their taxes so that they can afford a higher quality of life. In fact, we've lowered taxes nearly 180 times, saving the average Canadian family $3,400 per year in taxes. In fact, on May the 27th, the Parliamentary Budget Officer released a report, an analysis, which showed that since 2005, Canadians actually pay $30 billion less in tax than they did in just 9 years ago. That's just under $1,000 less for every man, woman, and child in Canada. And so, Mr. Speaker, I would say that the best thing a government can do to help families afford housing is to lower their taxes, put more money in their pockets, and create that kind of prosperity for families so that they can go out and purchase a house.
Exactly. Great answer.